Well, what's up guys, an interesting video coming your way this afternoon. So I thought I would do a video today talking about one of the most infamous games, infamous wrestling games that was ever released. So that's right, today I'm going to be talking about WWE 2K20. So WWE 2K20 came out was released on the 22nd of October 2019. And it basically received extremely bad reviews when it came out. It was actually voted as one of the worst video games that were actually released in 2019 in general. And it's not hard to see why when you look at the game now, like, it's not hard to see why the game received such bad reviews. You know, when you look at the game when it first came out, it was horrendous. It was a buggy, glitchy, broken mess. And, you know, it was sad to see the game in that sort of state. Like, it genuinely was. And I think, you know, you look at it and you think, like, this is just unbelievable. Like, really, really is unbelievable. So, you know, to see a game, you know, in that sort of condition, you know, to see a game, you know, released like that. Obviously, one of the biggest problems that 2K had, obviously, was the fact that just literally only a couple of months before the game was due to be released, Visual Concepts actually cut ties with 2K, and the 2K obviously brought in Visual Concepts to work on the game, but unfortunately, it seemed that it seemed they weren't able to do a very good job in what little time they actually had to work on the game. Obviously, the game was meant to be coming out, did come out on the 22nd of October 2019. It was a game that I got as a birthday present, and I remember playing it for the first few weeks and just thinking, like, this game is so bad. There were so many things wrong with it, like the gameplay was so, it was so bad, the graphics were so bad. You know, when you look at WWE 2K19, which was released a year prior, that game had way better graphics, the gameplay overall was a lot better. You know, there was so many things that made WWE 2K19 better than WWE 2K20. You know, for me, WWE 2K19 is up there as one of, if not the best 2K games to come out. You know, but there have been some stinkers, and WWE 2K20 was one of those stinkers. You know, I mean, 2K15 wasn't too bad. I mean, at least, I tend to prefer to play 2K15. I mean, I got it on both Xbox 360 and PS4. So with WWE 2K16 and 2K17, but I prefer to play 2K15, 16 and 17 on the Xbox 360 because there's more match types in that version of the game than there is on the PS4 version. But 2K20 was just a clusterfuck. There were so many issues. I remember community creations that year. There was such, like, one of the worst problems there were with the game that year was logo corruption. Like, you would download something from community creations and all of the logos would be completely missing. I mean, there was a workaround for that. What you had to do was basically delete the creation you downloaded, but not delete the images, and then go to deletion utility, delete the images from there, and that seemed to fix the issue. I mean, that was just one of the many problems that 2K20 had. Like, the roster wasn't too bad. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking of for the DLC that year. The only piece of DLC that I enjoyed was the Bump in the Night DLC pack, which obviously had the Fiend in it, and that was like a free pre-order bonus you could actually get if you didn't have to actually pre-order the game to get that. You know, I mean, it was just great. I mean, you pre-order the game and get it, get it when you redeem, get the code to redeem it when you actually got the game, which is what I did. I redeemed that code when I got the game and I got the Fiend. I mean, I think that a lot of people were surprised to have the Fiend in the game that year, as I don't think they expected him. As he was introduced, that character was introduced so late into the development for 2K20. I mean, if you think about it, right, so many people went back to WWE 2K19, and there was a very good reason for that. 2K20 was just a broken mess. I remember New Year's Day 2020. People couldn't even play the game, because every time they tried to access one of the game modes, the game crashed. All you could do was play an exhibition match, and that was about it. You couldn't do anything else. Like, you couldn't access my career, you couldn't access 2K Showcase, you couldn't access community creations, as every time you tried to access anything, the game would crash. But I feel like there's been a lot. I think, and then there was a workaround for that. What players on PlayStation could do was just reset their time and date settings back to 2019, and that seemed to solve the problem. But obviously, players on Xbox weren't able to do that, so they had to wait for a patch that came out in the February that actually fixed that. I mean, I was one of those players that did actually go back to WWE 2K19. Obviously, they kept the WWE 2K19 servers up for, well over 2 years. And obviously, they shut the servers down in the summer of 2022, around 3 or 4 months after the game, after WWE 2K22 had come out. So, obviously, we all know why it kept the servers up. So many people had gone back to it, and there were a lot of petitions for 2K to actually keep the servers up. As so many players had gone back to 2K19, as WWE 2K20 was just awful. Like, when I go back and I play it now, the one thing that really stands out to me was how bad the player models were in that game. Like, a lot of the wrestler models look like they're like miserable and depressed. That's the best way to describe it. I mean, I honestly don't think there's a good way to describe WWE 2K19. Like, I tried 2K20 rather. Like, I tried to think about some of the positives that game actually had, but I don't feel like there was really any positives. I mean, there may be a one or two. I feel like there was, one of the things I did like about WWE 2K20 was it felt like there were more kind of weapon options in that game, and I was, quite impressed with that. But that was the only thing that I would say I really liked about WWE 2K20. There was nothing else I really liked. I was impressed with the 2K showcase they went with that year, which focused obviously on the 4 horsewomen in NXT, that being Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, Bayley, and Sasha Banks. But it was hard to play through the 2K showcase mode because there were so many bugs and glitches that just ruined the mode completely for me. Like, one of the things that I used to do a lot on 2K20, and I still do it a lot on these games now, is community creations. I used to I always used to be downloading stuff practically every day, and there was a funny glitch with that as well. I remember there was a glitch where, as obviously it used to be like a maximum of 20 downloads, and once you got to 0, that would mean you couldn't download anything for another 24 hours. But there was this weird glitch where the game wasn't registering that the players had reached 0 downloads, so players were still able to download stuff when it said that there was 0 out of 20 downloads available, and obviously that was something they shouldn't have patched by there, so they can't allow people to have unlimited downloads, which is one of the things that players weren't allowed. I mean, you think about, obviously when you look at 2K20, I think WWE 2K20 really summed up the WWE products as a whole around that time, because you think about how crap Raw and SmackDown were around that time, and I feel like, I mean, NXT for me wasn't so bad, but Raw and SmackDown around 2019, 2020 was absolute dog crap, and I think that 2K20 kind of summed that up pretty well, as that game was absolute dog crap. I mean, it's like you think about the fact that the game was so bad, that it actually made 2K miss a year and not release a new game in 2021. Like in 2020, they ended up going with 2K Battlegrounds that year instead of releasing the WWE 2K21. And I think that time, the fact they took that kind of 2 years or so away to kind of focus on making a brilliant game really did bode well, because WWE 2K22 was a very solid game. There was a lot of things that 2K really did get right with that game, and it was a much better game to the one that we had seen just 2.5 years earlier. And I think WWE 2K20 is definitely one of those games that will always go down in infamy as being one of the worst that 2K have ever released. I mean, yeah, 2K15 was bad. It very limited match types. There wasn't really much to do, like, career mode wasn't that great for it. WWE 2K16 wasn't too bad. For me, I do enjoy playing that game, and I enjoy playing WWE 2K17 as well. I mean, yeah, there was still some crap, wrestling models in those games, but I feel like the wrestling models in those games, weren't as bad as what we were seeing in WWE 2K20. Like, I mean, I played obviously a WWE 2K24, and that's in a pretty bad state. It's in a bit of a sorry state of affairs. But it's not. I don't think like the issues or the bugs and glitches we've seen in that game are anywhere near as bad as what we saw in WWE 2K20. It was just unbelievable. Like some of the bugs and glitches you were seeing in that game are not sort of bugs and glitches you would expect to see in a video game. And I feel like the bugs and glitches and everything really did ruin the overall gameplay. I mean, you think about it, people was like, I just think that, like, when I think back to it now, like, people were so hyped up for WWE 2K20 because of how good WWE 2K19 had been the previous year. And people were obviously very excited for the improvements that were going to be made, how much better things were going to be. But they ended up going from bad to worse because obviously 2K, you extended their partnership with 2K. That led to Visual Concepts taking over, and Visual Concepts didn't have a lot of time to work on the game. They only had literally just over around 2 months or just over 2 months to work on the game, which wasn't a lot of time. And it wasn't like they could delay the game or whatever. They had to have it was like they had to with 2K they have to have the games out at a certain time. It's like WWE's decision really on when games come out, and they have to have the games out by that point. I mean, I think that's why 2K have never, as far as I'm aware of, have never actually delay the game. I mean, it's just craziness when you think about how bad WWE 2K20 was. I mean, it's not a game that I pick up, or not a game that I download and play all that often, because it's a game that wasn't all that enjoyable for me, and I think, and I don't think it was really enjoyable for that many people in general anyway. I think it was one of the worst that 2K have ever released, and I don't think it's harsh to say that 2K, they completely fucked up with WWE 2K20, and I won't say they completely fucked up with WWE 2K24, but you've seen a lot. I feel like we're seeing a lot of things in that game as well that we shouldn't be seeing, but I don't think we've seen anything that was as bad as what we saw with WWE 2K20. Like, some of the things we saw with that game were just absolutely horrendous and absolutely unbelievable. Like, not absolute joke, to be fairly honest. And I just don't know what else to say. I feel like I'm being harsh, but I'm only saying it as it is. 2K20 was one of probably the worst reviewed games of that year. It received so many bad reviews, it's unbelievable. It makes me laugh. when I go back and I look at some of the reviews, and see how bad it was. I remember, I went out with my mum one day, and we went up to Stratford, and it was about 7 months or so after WWE 2K20 released, so it hadn't been out that long. It'd obviously been out less than a year. And I went into, I think if I remember correctly, it was when my Universal credit had gone in one day. And we'd gone up to Stratford so I could spend that. And I went into game, and I was looking at the PS4 games, and there was something that caught my attention. I was looking at WWE 2K20, and game, as obviously this was when game was still there, it had gone right down to around around 15 quid. It had gone down from being a game that was like $59.99 to now only being 15 quid. And I just thought to myself, like, that really did show that they were struggling to sell copies of the game because people knew how bad it was. Like, people were very reluctant to pick the game up or pick up a copy of the game because they knew it was so bad. Obviously, a lot of people probably would have seen the online reviews, seen how seen how bad it was, seen that it wasn't a good game, and seeing how broken it was, and they probably decided to avoid buying that game. And I think they made the right decision, in avoiding buying that game. I only wish I had known that things were going to be so bad. If I had known the game was going to be so broken at launch, I would never have asked my nan to get it for me. It was just an unbelievable, it's one of the worst games I've ever played. It's up there with WWE 2K15 as being two of the worst 2K games I've ever seen released. I would give them a 1, if I could give them a 0 out of 5 stars, I probably would. I think even giving to WWE 2K20 a 1 star out of 10 would be, quite generous. I feel like some of the people who did their review, the online reviews, like Culture, IGN, and places like that, I think some of them were actually quite generous with the ratings they gave WWE 2K20. Well, I think I would have, I actually think I would have rated the game, I would rate it even now. I think I would rate the game lower than what some of them rated it at launch. I feel like not much has changed with WWE 2K20. It's still not a solid game. It's still not a game I enjoy playing, even 4 years down, literally 5 years after it's been released. I still don't know, around 5 years after it's been released, I still don't enjoy playing it. It's not a game that I enjoy playing often because it's just such a bad game. I can't understand how 2K were happy to put that game, to actually sell that game, and to actually, release that game in the broken state that it was in. It's the way I see it, with the broken state that WWE 2K20 was in, it should never have been released. Never. It still amazes me that a game that was in such a shit condition could be released. Really, it really does. But that's just my little kind of rewind, sort of, a little trip down memory lane for you guys today. I hope you've enjoyed my little review, my little trip down memory lane as we took a look back at WWE 2K20. Thankfully, things have since improved, and we've not yet seen a game that was as bad as that, or would be even worse. I don't even think things would even get worse than they did with WWE 2K20, but, we could very well see a WWE 2K20 happen again, which I hope it doesn't, but it very well could happen again. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little trip down memory lane, and I'll see you for another video very soon. Bye bye.